Well, God bless you and kingdom blessings. Apostle coming at you. We know that you have been blessed by these teachings that were born out of a sermon that turned into a summit. What was the sermon? It's in the house. And then that went into an awesome summit that we did in the month of February from his house to your house. Well, we want to let you know that another summit is coming in. But to get you ready for it, we are releasing these awesome teachings from this first summit. We know that you're going to be blessed because everything that we're talking about is all about what you need for your house. Jesus admonished us in Matthew 28:19 to teach them to observe all things. So you're going to be hearing more about investments. You're going to be hearing more about credit repair and debt reduction. All of these things that are making us stronger, so we will have the freedom to be a blessing to the kingdom. So stay tuned now and be blessed by this awesome teaching. God bless.
So our session today is going to be facilitated by Coach Della Major, who is an entrepreneur, a certified transformational life coach, a certified kidney health coach, an inspirational speaker, and an ordained elder at Valley Kingdom Ministries International. Today, she is going to share her real life experiences and expertise on how and why to establish a 501c3. Please know that at the end of her presentation, we will have a question and answer session. But if during her presentation you have a question, you can click the question mark icon that's on your bottom toolbar, and you can type in your question there. But also note at the end of the presentation, you may also be able to come up to our podium and ask your question. So now, without further delay, we're going to bring to our stage Coach Della Major.
I don't do the most, but I do a lot. I'ma make a toast, cause we still alive. No big, I feel like Pac. I shoot a shot. I'm coming in hot. Yeah, coming in hot. Just like the fajita. I write what I live. My life in the speaker. I'm nice with the flow.
All right, Teacher Tony. Look, that's my song for 2022, you guys. I'm coming in hot. And I hope that's your passion and that's your drive when you're thinking about starting a 501c3 nonprofit organization for yourself. You want to think about a big picture for 2022. You don't want to think about, just starting any type of organization. You want to think about that big picture, how you want to show up in your organization, in your community, what type of problem you're trying to solve. But then at the same time, what are some of the things that you need to do to be able to do that? So let me just ask these questions of you. Okay. Do you got a vision that you want to start a nonprofit? Okay. You don't have any ideas on how to get it started? Maybe you had an idea to get it started, but you're not sure as to where you need to go. You're not certain about whether or not if you even got the skill set to be able to start a nonprofit organization. Okay. You probably don't even know what is the things, what is the next idea, the next concept, the next mindset. Who do you need to have? If that's something that's going on through your mind, but you got passion, you got creativity, you got a focus, and you got a purpose, and you know God is calling you to do a certain specific ministry within your community, then I'm hoping to give you 4 strategies throughout this workshop that I hope will empower you, encourage you, and inspire you. Don't sit on that vision. It's going to be okay. We're going to start this by starting off right. And we're going to give you the tools and the strategies necessary to make sure that you obtain and become a 501c3 organization. So thank you for joining me today in this workshop. I am your coach, Della Major, and I'm here to serve you and help you to be able to reach your particular goals. So now let's join on into this presentation with me. Amen. All right. So we're talking about building a 501c3 strategy. As you guys already can see, I am a CEO and founder of my nonprofit, which is called L.Y.V.E. L.Y.V.E stands for Living Your Life Victorious and Empowered. Now, the purpose of my organization is to empower people with chronic kidney disease. So one of the very first steps and the very first thing that I'm going to start off with, the very first strategy is, I can't go to the strategy before I talk about the learning objectives. Let's briefly take a look at where we're going to go. In our learning objectives today, we're going to be talking about, the guide and the tool that we can use to help us establish the nonprofit organization. I discussed some 14 attributes with the 14 attribute charts. We'll discuss about articles of incorporation and 501c3 tax exempt. We'll discuss with you some founders' do's and don'ts, some nonprofit board basics, and then one of the key things about your organization, money. We will talk about the money. Then once we discuss and we talk about the money, then we go right into telling the foundational steps of actually identifying what will qualify you and help you to be recognized as a 501c3 organization. I discussed some other additional tax exempt, but the most important piece, the appendix, is a lot of things I'm going to be sharing inside of our presentation today. But that information, the links and the appendices, plus some additional resource documents, will be made available to you as a download at the end of the presentation, something that's a giveaway from you, okay? So now, let's get started with the presentation. Strategy number one. Strategy number one is we need to create a blueprint, a framework for your nonprofit organization. You see, when I started my organization, I was very passionate about the cause. I knew there was a need, there was a cause, there was a purpose, there was a focus. And so my mindset was only concentrating on the cause and what it would take to actually solve that particular problem. Okay? I wanted to start, I knew it was going to be a nonprofit. I knew I wasn't out for no money. It was just a matter of me being a resource for the community and the entity that I was trying to serve. I didn't think big picture. I didn't think past that situation. When you're talking about establishing a successful and a thriving nonprofit, the first thing you want to do is lay out the blueprint and the framework. You want to be able to put out what kind of nonprofit entity are you trying to establish? How you want to show up within your community. Is this nonprofit a one-hit wonder? Or what are you going to look, where would your nonprofit be 5 years, 10 years from now? Okay? Is your nonprofit centered or dependent solely around you? Or is it really a community-based organization to solve and help to meet the needs of the community? You need to know where you're going to go. You need to know how you're going to finance it. You need to know who you're going to have working with you. All of these pieces. You need to know marketing. You need to know fundraising. Everything that you're talking about when you think about nonprofit, that framework needs to be done right at the beginning. You can't even think about corporations or anything unless you know where you want to go. What is your why? What is the reason for you starting a nonprofit? You need to have that framework because it's that framework, that map that's going to actually drive you and it's going to give you the tools and give you the foundation by which you're going to start on that entity. And that's important, okay? So strategy number one is developing that framework because what's consistent in that framework is everything that IRS is going to need and going to want to know when you try to apply to become to obtain your 501c3 status, okay? So one of the good things as a tool that the Secretary of State, Jesuit Division Business Offices, is they provided this pamphlet. This 8-page pamphlet is a guide to organizing not-for-profit organization. This simple little 8 pages outlines and gives you a general standard framework that you can build on to help you to start and to actually build your legal structure the right way. I didn't have this tool, this resource when I started my nonprofit. I just went on, did a Google University, and just put out this information and just started trying to think and put things together. If I would have had this framework, if I would have had this tool, this resources, a lot of messy mistakes that I made in the beginning could have been easily solved if I would have had that. So this publication is going to be the link to it and the information in the appendices for you. And so I definitely highly make a recommendation that you go to the link, pull it up. It is a PDF, simple print, and work this document. Because if you work it, it's going to work for you. Okay? Second, there's 14 attributes of a thriving nonprofit. I had the opportunity to go through a leadership lab when I was actually being certified to do this process. Okay? And this document was given as a resource tool. I wish to God I would have had this resource tool prior to me getting started and doing the structural part of my nonprofit. Why? Because on this resource tool, as you see here, it outlines the 5 key components that are going to exist that you need to be thinking about when you talk about starting your nonprofit. People, money, programs, marketing, and the strategy at the end. You notice in the subcolumn headings at the top, you got messy, growing, healthy, and thriving. I'm telling you, when you first starting off, and especially you're doing it yourself, you're going to be in the messy column for at least your very first couple of years. Why? Because when you're thinking about a thriving nonprofit, a couple things need to come into play. Did I think about my board diversity when I'm talking about the people who I'm trying to work with? No. Did I think about what's going to be the responsibilities of my board? Not really. All I was just knowing is that I need to get a board so I can start my nonprofit. Did I think about the leadership role, the financial stability? I thought about fundraising. All my mind is, I just go for grants. But fundraising far supersedes this grants. That means a lot of things comes into play when you're talking about the strategy and building an effective strategy for a 501c3. And if I would have had this tool resource, I think a lot of mistakes that I made in the beginning wouldn't have been as much mistakes. I could have had to start it off on a very better and a different format structure. So I was in the messy for quite a while. And I'm just now really saying that I'm coming out of being messy until I'm getting ready to go into growing. Because why? Once I saw this tool and this resource, I realized I had some things I got to redo all over again. And I had to go back. But that's okay. Because when you're a little bit messy, you can clean up your mess, right? That's right. All right. Let's move forward. Strategy number 2. Strategy number 2 is the actual incorporation process itself. You need to get to the mindset of going through what is required to actually begin to even think about receiving or becoming a 501c3 organization. The very first step is obtaining your articles of incorporation. Okay? When you're going through the basic step by step, you're going to be first starting off completing this general application from the Secretary of State. And this general application is for a general not-for-profit corporation. That people say, is there a difference between nonprofit and not-for-profit? In actuality, no, because they both is reinvesting back into the business, but the variation comes into play where nonprofits focus more on charitable donations, contributions, and fundraising, where not-for-profit organization might have certain taxable restraints and situations and issues. That is something a little bit different. But yet still, when we're talking about privatizing, when we're talking about reinvesting, it's not about getting money out. It's about putting money back in. So when you're looking at that particular strategy, it starts out first completing the application process with the Secretary of State, filling and completing all of the requirements that is required on that application, submitting it to the actual organization, to the downtown in Springfield, and then basically getting recognized as a nonprofit. Okay? That's going to be key. That's your very first phase. Okay? As it relates to the 501c3 tax exempt, the key concept here that I want to bring out is this. 501c3 is associated with nonprofit organizations, specifically that's considered as public charities, private foundations, or private operating foundations, such as religious, like L.Y.V.E, such as educational, like National Kidney Foundation, such as other entities, American Kidney Fund. Since I deal in the arena for my nonprofit, those organizations, all of that fit in the parameters of the 501c3 status, because not only are we collecting donations, but everything relates to educational resource, and that's very key. So regardless of what your status is going to be, the very first phases when you talk about strategy is completing and making sure you become an incorporation. Okay, so that is strategy number 2. Strategy number 3 is create a winning team. Look, I didn't think big picture when it came down to me creating my winning team. I knew I had a cause. I know there's a problem. I believed I had the tools, the know-how, the knowledge to solve it. So my whole thing was, I need to just become an organization. I got friends, family members. Surely they're going to help me out. And we'll be able to just get the work done. We're just going to do the work. No, you're doing yourself a disservice when you're talking about developing that 501c strategy for your organization if you don't put in that mindset your winning team. Because it's going to be that team and it's going to be that structure within your organization that's going to help you to not only look, but yet still qualify as a legitimate, legally structured 501c3 organization when you go to apply for your status. Okay, so let's talk about who's part of the winning team. The first people I want to talk about is the founders. Okay, we are a very unique group of people. Okay, founders, we cannot seem to leave well enough alone. Why? Because we see things differently than other people. We see the problem, we see the cause, we see what we need to do. So we began to start taking on a personal responsibility to make sure that our organization, the cause, the program, whatever it is, make sure it happens. So we're not really thinking about, is it really important for me to have the right people around? You just know there's a problem. You got a problem to solve. And you, as that founder, is like, hey, I'm a visionary. One of the good things, the story I like to tell quickly here is, when MTV was created, they said that founder was so out there and so unique to the point that people who was trying to get with him didn't quite understand the founder, but yet still they understood the mission. Okay. But there was an individual who not only gravitated and understood what the mission was, so much so that it was not the founder who made MTV the way it is now. It was that person who bought into that particular cause. That is the person that made MTV the entity that it is now. So I want to talk to you founders about some do's that you need to remember. Number 1, you need to make sure you surround yourself with people who is deeply passionate and knowledgeable about the problem you solve. Yes, you are the subject matter expert. Yes, you are. But there's still somebody else who's equally as passionate, just like you are, that might have just a little bit more knowledge than you. So together, you guys working together makes that organization the way it is. So you want to make sure that you surround yourself with people who equally as knowledgeable, because why? They're going to help you carry your nonprofit further than you can even imagine. Second, you want to build with a group of people that's outside your immediate sphere of influence. What do I mean? Maybe there's somebody who's in the construction business, not necessarily in the renal business, but they're in the construction business that can help me be able to, meet the needs of what needs to happen, but at the same time, they could come in with a perspective, something totally different than I didn't see before. So you want to make sure that you got somebody not just necessarily within your sphere, but somebody maybe outside. The next thing, you want to embrace mistakes. Remember, I told you I was messy in the beginning. I made a lot of messy mistakes, but those mistakes was allowing me to be able to build a solid foundation, to go back, to correct, and to build on a good, solid platform. So it's okay to make mistakes, because as you guys going through the process, and as you are building your nonprofit for long-lasting terms, you want to learn from those mistakes. You're going to make some mistakes. It's all right. So embrace it. You know, if you don't have, you can't make it, don't make it, but just embrace it. Then have it in your mindset. You are your very first investor. You are the one that's going to be raising the money first. You're going to be the hustler in your business. Sometimes, in some cases, you're going to be the self-funder. Okay? In my business, when I started this nonprofit, I have spent thousands of dollars, not hundreds, thousands of dollars, self-funding my organization. I was okay with it. Because why? My big picture, I want this organization to succeed far beyond me. Okay? So that's some founders' do's. Some founders don't. One of the things, founders, you do not, one of the things that you don't, that you need to know in your don't is you don't own the organization. Soon as you became a nonprofit or entity, it no longer your nonprofit. It is the community. It's the public access. It's the public nonprofit. It's not your nonprofit. Okay? Second thing is, founder, you don't control your organization. Why? Because you're not the one running it. It's a governance office. It's a board now running your organization. It's your board that basically is the one that's going to be leading. So you need to make sure you understand that once you started, you might have started. That does not mean that you'll be the one finishing it. So you are not the one that's controlling it. Second thing, you don't want to recruit only board members who want to agree with you. That means you don't want to just recruit your family members, or you try to recruit other people who that you feel that you can tell them what you want to be done. That's not a board. That's not a good, solid foundation and a thriving organization structure. You don't want to do that. Remember, the goal in this particular case is to ensure that your organization, like in my case, L.Y.V.E, I want L.Y.V.E 20 years from now, even if I'm not here, still to be going. That is the goal. The goal for the organization is that it thrives even if you are not part of it. Okay? Second thing, when we're talking about creating the winning team, you need to understand the nonprofit basics. The full purpose of a board is to govern the organization and to protect the public interests, the public access, all of the things that your charitable organization is saying and designing for that community. It also makes sure that your board is making sure that your mission and your vision is being carried out for what you designed and created this particular nonprofit organization for. Because when you're filling out the information for the 501c3, that's going to be the very first thing that IRS is going to say on that application. What is the purpose of this organization? And you got to be able to describe it and give a full detail why you started this nonprofit. Because it will come into play whether or not you qualify for that 501c3 status. Okay? What is the basic composition of the board? The basic composition for the state of Illinois, you only need 3 people to start your board, to start this nonprofit organization. And one of those people could be you, the founder. So in my case, when I started my board, it was me plus 2 other individuals that I asked to be part of, but yet still they had no direct connection or interest as part of association with my board. My goal was to get my organization, get my articles of corporation, so I get my 501c3, so I can start solving the problem. That was my thinking. It was not forward thinking as to establishing a longevity, establishing a founding board so that we can carry this vision far beyond my expectation. That's the reason why you see when you're talking about the composition, board members should not be family members. I'm dealing in the renal community. So I try to have my children be part of the board. No. Why? Because of the fact it's personal. And when you're thinking about family members, you want to take that into consideration. Because when something as close as that might be too much for them. Then you might think about your family members might not be as committed, because then their personal interest, it doesn't interfere. It's not something pertaining to them. It's something pertaining to you. And so your expectation that they should be there is a false expectation. Okay? Employees, you're not going to have staff on your board. Why? They're staff. Simple as that. But the key piece here is the other. IRS defines individuals who have 35% interest or more in any organization as a co-owner of the business. They can be part of the board. They have a personal interest there. And that personal private interest cannot be made up of that private composition of the board. When you look at that pamphlet, it will clearly outline that particular detail. And you want to pay attention to that, because when you're talking about 501c3 status, that's going to come back to play. Okay. But the key thing that I definitely want to emphasize here is these 4 positions. Your board needs these officers. You need to have a chair, president, CEO, whatever you're defining in your bylaws. But it's the person who's going to run the meetings, who's going to basically keep everybody on track. Then you need to have a vice president. Someone, if the chair or the board CEO person is not available, they can continue to run the organization while you're not available, or if you're unable to attend. You need somebody to take the notes, because monthly or bi-monthly, however you set up your structure, you need these minutes to be coded, and you need to show that you've been meeting to discuss the overall structure and entity of your board and your nonprofit organization. But the most important person is the treasurer, the one that handles the money. This individual is the one that's going to help you to stay financially fit and have your financial structure pieces in play, especially for your filing, especially for the IRS, your investors. These are the ones that you need to make sure that you have the right person that's handling the money. So when we talk about creating a winning team, all of these pieces needs to be in place. And as the founder, you need to know, you need to be willing enough to share your organization to make sure that your board composition and your organizational foundation is set on good, solid ground. Okay. Strategy number 4. Strategy number 4, we're talking about creating a fundraising plan. That's something nobody really thought about. I know I didn't think about it. I know I was the person coming up with the money, but I didn't think about, anything else. I just like, okay, I get a grant. But when you're talking about establishing and setting up money, funding your organization, all of that comes into play. Okay? There's a warning that I have here, and the reason for this warning is significant. It's because it's specifically in the state of Illinois. Once you become recognized with your articles of incorporation, before you can even begin talking about soliciting money, going forth doing fundraising, or any type of collection investment, you need to make sure that you are being identified and recognized by the Attorney General's office. That means they have to be the one to establish your organization as a charitable organization to solicit funds. If you are not identified by the Attorney General office to begin to accept contributions and solicit funds, you can pay a heavy fine. So in addition to filling out the information for the state, you need to fill out the information for the Attorney General office as well. That is a CO1 and CO2 documentation, and it's very much fully detailed, and that information needs to be intact before you even start considering taking any form of contributions. Outside of your own self-funding, that needs to be in play. That's the reason why I say you need to think realistically, because most of the money that you are raising in the beginning, especially self-starting, it's going to come from donations from you, your board members, and that needs to be clearly identified that whomever you're putting on your board, you need to let them know, I'm expecting you to pay either a monthly fees or whatever to contribute to the organizational structure of this active nonprofit organization, volunteers, community members, other interests. That is going to be important. Money, money, money. You need to know how you're going to fund your business, okay? One of the things about obtaining that 501c3 status, a lot of people say, oh, I just, I need bread, I need blankets. If I can't get, actual cash, maybe Walmart can be able to maybe donate the hot dog buns. Maybe Walmart can be able to donate the hot dogs. Walmart is not that friendly to give you no money or give you no product if they don't know you. So in other words, your organization needs to be established before large organizations such as Walmart, Target, or any other company that, that has a donation or a grant or part of their entity. They want to see what are you doing with what you got right now. How are you making the money? How are you funding your money? What do you do when you got the money? You need to prove that you are an investment worth investing into, okay? I want to show you guys this very brief video in relation to talk about a fundraising plan. And when you come back, we'll talk about it there.
Hey there, I'm Sandy Reese, Chief Encouragement Officer here at Get Fully Funded, where we show small nonprofits how to raise money so that they can do more good in the world and change more lives. If you're like most, you know that you need a fundraising plan, but you may not have any idea where to start with it. Or maybe you've got a few things going, you're just spending a lot of time shooting from the hip, you're just kind of making it up as you go. Maybe your plan is in your head, which is not really a plan. It's time for you to get a little more serious about that fundraising plan. Nobody ever raised all the money they needed without a plan. I'll just tell you that right now. You have to have a plan. Now, if you're wondering where do I start, what should be in my plan, I want to give you a little structure today that'll help you. This is what we call our 1-10-1000 rule, and it helps you know how much of what to put in your plan. So let's get started. The 1 in the 1-10-1000 rule refers to one event. Now I'm talking about fundraising events here, not volunteer events, not anything related to programs. This is a fundraising event. What you don't want to do is little fundraising event after little event after little event after little event all year long. I know some organizations that do that, and it's exhausting. It's exhausting to the staff and the volunteers to have to keep planning and executing all that. It's exhausting to their donors and the community because it's like every time they turn around, those people are showing up trying to sell them a ticket. Do one event, do it really well, like hit it out of the park, give it everything you've got, and then move on. What you really want to do is make that event a signature event, which means everybody in town knows it's your event. They associate it with your organization, and it's as big as it can be. Now you're going to want to put a really nice sponsor package together and get your corporate sponsors. You'll probably need a committee. There may be some other ways that you want to add revenue streams, but do the one event, do it well, hit it out of the park, and then move on, because there's other stuff that you need to be doing, like 10 grants. Now, why 10? Well, it fits really nicely in 1-10-1000. We have a grant writer here on staff at Get Fully Funded, and she does a lot of grant research for people, and she can almost always find 10 good, hot grant leads. So these are not like, you might get the grant, you might. These are like, this is a good fit for your organization. You've got a good shot at this. You need to go after it. You might find more or less. Sometimes she finds less, sometimes she finds more. But the point here is don't leave grant money on the table. You have to go do your research to find out which opportunities are the best fit for you, and then create that deadline calendar so that you know what's coming and when, you don't miss any deadlines, and then just go after it. Keep that grant pipeline full because it can take some time. If you started today doing your research, you're going to figure out really fast that there's some grants that are 6 months down the road. There's some that you can't apply for and for like 10 months from now. So the sooner you get it organized and get on that, the better. Don't leave grant money on the table. One of my favorite clients just posted on Facebook this morning that they got a $45,000 grant. I'm super excited for them about that. They're keeping their grant pipeline full, and that's what you should do as well. So in the 110-1000 rule, we have one event, 10 grants. Here comes the 1,000. You want to build your donor base.
So, all right. Okay. So when we talked about that, what I loved about this one event, the 110-1000, it actually was something that I found, and I was thinking about how can I really, build my my donation, my resources, my financial resources, the funding for my organization. And so I started last year with my one event, which was 50-50 initiative. And so with that 50-50 initiative, the goal was to, get 50 people to donate $50 to save 100 lives, the $100 is patient. And that event went extremely well. So that is my signature event that I'm looking to carry on moving forward until we either change it or something different, or it get even bigger. So when you think about that one event, you want to think about, even in your framework, what event that you can start off with that can be big, that you can utilize and start, your fundraising launching with, and make it so, and make it happen with all of these mindset. And then what I loved about, and this is something I didn't think about, was when she said, don't leave the grant money on the table. You do need to do the research. I didn't do as much research relating to grant money. I just said, I'm thinking this is a cause. Kidney disease, everybody have a problem with kidneys. So the money just should have been flowing in. And I learned the hard way, that's not so. What might have been passionate and important to me might not have been passionate and important to someone else. So that means I needed to go ahead and pursue even more. And I didn't do that, but I'm thankful for wisdom from other individuals, and now I'm well on my way. Remember, I told you I was in the messy, but now I'm more well on my way into the growing. So these are things that you got to think about when you talk about funding your organization. In addition to the funding, doing the events, the grant. She mentioned about 1,000 donors. Now, I know you're probably thinking, can I really get 1,000 donors to invest in my business? Hey, it can happen. But since we're small, start small. Maybe 100, 200. Think about it in that case. Those donors that's willing enough to want to make a standard monthly or even yearly annual donation to yourself. Okay? But once you start building on the money, you got to think about how you're going to maintain it. How you're going to budget this money. That's going to be important. So just like you do your budget in your personal, you're going to create and developing a budget for your nonprofit. What's the purpose of the budget? It's like everything else. It helps define and set your priorities. It helps manage what's going in, what's coming out, the resources. You manage your access. It helps you to see a bigger picture of your financial position. What things that you need. What is your starting, budget? What do you need to do to make sure that your launch of your 501c3 is on a good, solid foundation? Remember, I told you the most important person was that treasurer. So that treasurer comes into play in helping you to produce these projections, outline projections of where you want to see your nonprofit organization, 5 years, 10 years from now, not just this current year, but that forthcoming. So your revenues and expenses, but most important piece here is you're meeting the requirements and the regulations, not only from the IRS, but for your investors, as well as the people where you're getting the money from consistently, which is your funders. That's leading us to our last piece here. That is the steps to create a 501 charitable organization. I broke it down in strategy form, but now you need to see it in a big picture form. The very first step, of course, is article of incorporation, paying the fees, your attorney general filings, making sure all of that information is into play. Once you've been identified as an organization, then you go and apply through IRS.gov to get your FEN-IN number, your employee identification number. That's when you go and get the FIN number. I know that when I first started, I went and applied for the FEIN number before I even had the organization. That is out of order. Get the organization, go for the actual employer identification number, then work on your bylaws. Because when you're filling out the 501c application, they're going to ask you to submit your adopted bylaws. And what I mean by adopted, that means your board members, you guys discussed it, you made all the rules, the regulations, the processes, and you ratified it and you adopted it as law. This is what's going to govern your organization. So you're going to have to adopt your bylaws, as well as making sure you have your conflict of interest policy identified. Now, by me being a national patient ambassador, and I'm a speaker, and I work with several entities, I had to make sure that I had a conflict of interest policy, not only within my own individual organization, making sure that the people I'm bringing on, especially outside, that they don't have any conflict of interest, but then also I had to make sure that it was clearly defined for me for outside corporations and entities that I'm linked with and associated. So all of that came into play. And I'm thankful that before I actually did my filing, that I found this information out before, because that would have been a major piece when it came down for me trying to get my 501c3 status with the IRS, especially when I was completing the application. Step number 5 is that we want to make sure that all of the detailed information that's on the form relates to exempt purposes. So that means on the application, it talks about, the income tax for this particular organization. Is it for charitable? Is it for religious? Is it for educational? There's specific codes, IRS codes, that you got to indicate on the actual application form. Those codes must match these 3 in order to be classified for the 501c3. So that's going to be important. Your language in your organization. So it asks you, what's the purpose of you starting this entity? So you got to make sure that the language is clear, but the language is clear that supports charitable, religious, or education. All of these 3 purposes falls under the 501c3 charitable tax exempt status. You got to also make sure that your language is not showing or indicating private interest, any political interest, or any type of political lobbying. That's going to be very key, because they are looking at that. No government affiliation, nowhere. Okay? And again, all of the assets that you have, that you design in your organization, must be dedicated for exempt purposes. That means it's nothing you gaining, no extra private resources of money or capitalization off whatever you are investing into your organization. So what kind of form, which form you're going to be filling out? For the form that you're going to be completing for the 501c3 is the 1023 form. The 1023 form is in 2 types of format. One is the original form, which is like 18 or so pages long. It's really exhaustive and detailed. If you have an entity that maybe have 50 or more employees, or you're making more than $50,000 annually as far as income coming in for your organization, more than likely you'll be filling out the 1023. If you're a startup or you're starting 501c3 entity, then more than likely you're going to be filling out the 1023. Okay? That means you're making $50,000 and less in financial contributions and resources annually. All right? Those forms is really, the 1023 is exhaustive, but the EZ is exactly what it says. EZ. One of the things pertaining to that application is you got to make sure that the Attorney General's Office CO1 and CO2 document has shown you as a registered charitable soliciting organization. So that's key before you even start this process as well. Okay. Other exemptions to take into play is when we're talking about our state income tax exemption. If you get approved for federal first, your state is automatically exempt. That's the reason why they have you fill out the 1023 first. Okay. But I'm going to end with this as it relates to these other two exemptions. A lot of people think that because you're a 501c3, automatically you tax exempt. That means you don't have to pay your state taxes. That is not so. Based off the information you put on that application, based off your status, and the supporting documentation is whether or not you qualify for the E number. Not every 501c3 entity is tax sales exempt. So that's something you have to take a little bit further detail and resource into it. And lastly, but not least, of course, is county property tax. The county property tax only comes into play if you're using a personal property as your nonprofit organization for charitable purposes. So that's something a little bit different, a little bit more in depth. That's something you can take a look into. Our final next two slides is just the appendices. Like I said, this information will be made available as a handout that you can collect, and the administrators will make sure that you get the link to know where to get these information and documentation from for your own purposes, and all of everything that I shared. So it's a lot of detail, but I hope that you was able to see the big picture in establishing your 501c3. So we're going to bring back on our moderators for our question and answer sessions and be able to move forward.
Well, thank you so much, Coach Della. I know that was a lot of information. In the behind the scenes, I was trying to type in some of the highlights. Again, if you do have questions, and we're going to put a podium up in just a moment, you are welcome to come up to the podium and ask your question, or use that question mark at the bottom of your screen to type in any questions that you have. Again, this is your time, and we're glad that you're here. So one of the questions that we do have for you, Coach Della, is in Illinois, about how much does it cost to go through that filing process?
Well, it's in phases. So when you think about costs, you got to look at the phase of each individual. So when you talk about for the Secretary of State, the initial $25 to actually start the application process for the incorporation. However, there is a $75 expedition fee that the Secretary of State in Springfield requires for you to process. So that first initial cost is that $100 for that. But then you got to look at when I mentioned about the Attorney General's office, based off of where you are in your area of completion of the application process and your 501c3, you might be only spending $15 just to complete the CO1 and the CO2 document, or you could be spending up to $100 if you had already started, but never let them know that you actually started. So everything based on the timing. So with that, so you got $100 from the state, potentially $100 or $115 plus whatever fines with the Attorney General. Then with the EZ form for the 1023, it's $250 for the EZ form. But for the 1023 itself, it can be extremely costly. It can be up to from $600 to $1,500. I've seen it as high. Why? It's really based off on the organization, how large of an organization it is, how detailed the makeup of that organization. So if I had to give a price or a suggestive cost to have when you're thinking about financials and initial investment, I would say maybe have in the bank set aside $500 to $600. That, not saying necessarily you might need to use it all, but at least you securely will have all of your filing fees and charges covered.
Okay, thank you for that. We have another question. And again, if you have one, you're just welcome to come up to the podium, but we do have another question. Mm-hmm. And someone wants to know, can they file all of this on their own, or do they need the assistance of an accountant or some other legal professional?
Look, I'm going to be transparent. I started this whole process self. I did everything on my own. And trust me when I say the pressure and the stress was real. Okay? So I'm saying to you, unless you really understand true legal jargon, unless you really say you have the down pat and you're able to fill it out and complete, get help. Do I need to have an accountant? Do I need to have an attorney? Do I need to have all of these resources? Not necessarily. Because for me, what I wind up doing is I went to the legal schools. I went to Loyola Business Law School. These are law students who are about to get their JDs, who are being governed by an actual licensed attorney. And I went with them what I had already started with, and I had them to take a look at what I needed, where if I was on the right path. And I found out I actually was not bad as I thought I was, but did they help me to perfect it? Yes, they did. So I am telling you, get the help. You can't do it on your own, but I'm making a recommendation. Don't do things the hard way like I did. Go out there, go to these law schools. Trust me, they welcoming you. They want you to come. Why? That's giving them the experience and the internship. You don't have to spend a lot of money to do something.
I like that. And that's a resource that many of us probably didn't even know existed. So thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of touched on it a little bit, but can you give some more reasons why a person's application might be rejected?
It's their legal setup, their foundation. Look, paperwork is everything. If you don't have your paperwork in order from the moment you became incorporated all the way to the point you beginning to start the process of filing for your 501c3 status, you will be denied. All of those are interlinked to one another. So you got to make sure you read the fine print. You got to make sure everything is in order. Your bylaws, your incorporation, your charitable acknowledgement for the Attorney General, your codes. You got to make sure all of that is done. Because if you don't have those in order, you will be denied. Because IRS looks and want and seek for that information. Most people are denied because of the lack of their financial setup, their paperwork, and their overall legal structure of their organization. They don't have it in order.
All right. Well, thank you again, because throughout this presentation, you have told us step by step what we need to do to make sure everything is in order. Another question someone may have, sometimes they hear nonprofit and they think that means that, you did mention it earlier, but if you could just emphasize that again, that the nonprofits, doesn't mean that you're not going to make any money. As I said, you did mention that in the presentation, but if you could just highlight that for us.
Let me just tell you this. Most entities and a lot of businesses, if you really think about it, if you really do your research, you will find there are more nonprofit corporations out there than regular corporations. Nonprofits makes money. The only thing different between a nonprofit and a for-profit entity is just the setup. Nonprofit, you invest the money back into the organization, whereas that for-profit, of course, you paying dividends, you got stockholders, you're doing public filing, all of that. But a nonprofit organization can make money. Look, National Kidney Foundation that I'm associated with make millions. Probably close to billions if I really think about it, but they make millions, and the whole legal structure, the financial is already set. So your organization can make money because it's not about you making money for your personal gain. It's about the resources that you bringing in to make sure that your organization is meeting the needs and its longevity for the cause that you're trying to solve.
All right. So again, we're just leaving the floor open in case there are any more questions. But if not, Coach Della, do you have any closing remarks you'd like to share with the group?
Yeah, my closing remark is this. I just want to first, you talked about making money, and that's something really, really important. I started my nonprofit not because of making money or for me to get paid from my nonprofit. I started this to really meet a need and a cause within the renal community. You need to make sure you understand the purpose and the reason why you want to become and start a nonprofit organization. If you're trying to start a nonprofit organization because you're thinking, oh, I can get my taxes exempt, or I can eventually get paid, this could be my 9-to-5 job, and I can make sure that, I get, the income structure, then I want to give you this wonderful, and I'm saying the word wonderful, advice. Get a job. because that's not the purpose of the nonprofit. The purpose of nonprofit is for you to really meet the need and a charitable cause. If you're thinking that you're trying to be rich, and you only in it just for the sole purpose of how you could be able to benefit and gain, then you're defeating the purpose of why you even started the nonprofit from the beginning. Remember, the goal is that this organization runs far beyond you as the years to come. That's number one. But number two, if you've been given this ministry and you've been given the breakthrough, you've been given the opportunity to be able to come and solve a problem within your community and make an impact in your community, we need you. We need you to get out there. We need you to get right. We need you to get funded, and we need you to get going. Why? Because the community needs you. The community needs what you have to offer and say. And so I hope that, anything that I shared throughout this time from a founder perspective, that you take a look, be willing enough to share your organization with a much larger group of people. Surround yourself with people just as passionate as you are, and try to meet to try to solve the cause and meet the problem. And I'm quite sure if you do those things, when you're thinking and you're forward thinking big, your nonprofit is going to be just as successful as I know it can be.
All right. Well, we did have a question that came in from Deborah, and she wants to know, are you just under a bigger nonprofit?
No, I'm actually separate. And my nonprofit is a separate entity, but I work in a partnership with a larger organization. So L.Y.V.E is what it is. And I work specifically and primarily with three organizations: American Kidney Fund, American Association of Kidney Patients, and National Kidney Foundation. I do a lot of things for them. I am their resident advisory board member and council member, as well as their national patient ambassador. So you'll see me doing a lot of things with them. But as far as my organization is concerned, it is separate, but at the same time, it's a lot of partnership. So a lot of the resources, materials, information, and everything is vetted, and I'm recognized as board certified with them.
So that kind of raises another question, maybe in our last minute. Mm-hmm. How do people find other organizations to partner with? Do you have any suggestions for people who are looking for other organizations to partner with?
Well, you have to do your research. Google University is very great. Remember, the cause is what's drawing and gravitating you towards it. Like, I know what specific area within the renal that I'm servicing. So you got to look at what's the need, what is the cause, the problem you're trying to solve, and then you go out there, you do your research. Go to the library, and on the 5th floor, if I'm correct, down the Chicago Public Library, or even your public library, you could be able to get access to the database, and you look for those organizations, those entities that's either meeting the same need or serving the community with the same cause. And then that's how you make connections with the CEOs, the presidents, the workers, the volunteers. And that's another way. Volunteer. That's how I actually got connected and have the platform that I have, is because I became a volunteer before I became a founder.
Very nice. Very nice. So again, thank you so much for all the information and experiences that you shared. Thank each of you for joining us this afternoon. We're all going to exit out using the exit to lobby when that comes available, and we can all join together, I believe, in our general session together. So we're all going to the exit to lobby, and we will all be in the general session to hear our closing remarks together. Thank you again for joining.
Wow, was that an awesome teaching? Well, you just can't go in the past. We're going to have new classes, and also we're mixing them together in the next summit. You don't want to miss it. Now, there was no charge on the next one, but we want you to put an investment even into your future. So until that time, be blessed, and remember 2 things. Praise is still what we do, and Apostle still here.